Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Any surprise the U.S. Supreme Court blocked the use of the Alien Enemy Act? There seems to be this outsider's perception the court leans conservative and would seem to favor Trump as he appointed 3 of the current justices. So what does this reveal about this country's judicial branch?
Well, the reason why there is that perception is because a majority of the Supreme Court justices were appointed by conservative presidents. And as you point out, 3 of those individuals were appointed by Trump himself. But 6 out of the 9 justices were appointed by conservative presidents, and they are generally considered to be conservative. That doesn't mean you can always tell exactly which way they're going. But yesterday's decision on a Friday afternoon, while it didn't actually speak to the merits of whether Trump will ultimately be allowed to deport these Venezuelan nationals or anyone using this centuries-old wartime law, it does indicate that they are somewhat skeptical of how the Trump administration has represented what they are doing with the deportations in court. And while the court said that those individuals who are subject to deportation must be given what we call due process, which means they need to be given notice that they're subject to removal and time to challenge it, the Supreme Court was clear that we're not really defining what reasonable time to challenge it means, but less than 24 hours is surely not enough to pass muster. And they said that clearly, sending a signal to the Trump administration that what it appears they've been doing thus far under this law doesn't seem to pass muster.
So that being said, by the Supreme Court sort of kicking this case down to the lower court, so to speak, is it procedural? I mean, this really isn't over yet. At some point, will there be a resolution? And how long can this go on?
Well, I think there will be a resolution on whether the Trump administration can, in fact, use this law, probably sooner than later, and it will come up to the Supreme Court in an emergency posture. It could happen in weeks. It could be a couple of months. Interestingly, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a Trump appointee, wrote separately yesterday in the decision, it's what's called a concurrence, where he said, I think we should go ahead and take up the merits now. I think we should go ahead and decide this now so that we can give guidance to these courts across the country that are grappling with the Trump administration moving quickly on these deportations. Now, he didn't get his way there, but he wanted to make sure that he noted it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find a petition and a request for the Supreme Court to weigh in on the merits of the use of this law sooner than later. But what the Supreme Court did yesterday was a little bit more than procedural. They actually told the Fifth Circuit, this is the federal appeals court overseeing cases out of Texas, where a lot of these people are in detention facilities. They told the Fifth Circuit, you got it wrong. You didn't give anyone enough time, and we're taking away your previous decision and we're sending it back to you with very specific instructions. So I think the court was a little more than your standard procedural fare at the Supreme Court. And I think it was also sending a clear message to the Fifth Circuit of how they need to handle things going forward.
And Katie, almost out of time, but I also have to ask you about the Supreme Court looking at Trump's wish to end birthright citizenship, which also involves the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. No outcome there yet, but what's at stake?
Well, really the question in that case is actually about the power of a single federal district court judge in the United States being able to block a president from enforcing his policy nationwide. Now, the Supreme Court may also ultimately weigh in on birthright citizenship, but I didn't hear a single justice that was in favor or supportive of the Trump administration's efforts to end birthright citizenship during the 2.5 hours that I was inside the room for oral argument. Now, we'll have to wait and see on whether they're going to touch that issue or merely address the issue about the power of a single judge to issue what we call universal injunctions. But we'll have to see what happens with that.
All right. Always great to get your take and your perspective. Katie Barlow, thank you for joining us.